Hello, I'm Jesse, and today I'm making a video kind of celebrating the 300,000 subscriber mark, which is just mind-boggling because literally 2 years ago I had about 100 subscribers, and just out of nowhere in 2020, right before the pandemic, it just exploded, and now I got all these people, and I've been kind of thinking about like what do I want to do with the channel. To this day, I still have no idea where to go with it because I've kind of, in terms of like short films, I've kind of made everything that I wanted to make. But I had an idea. I'm a huge fan of supernatural stuff. You know, UFOs, Sasquatch, ghosts to some extent. And on my free time, I will just kind of just go through videos of hours of videos on this topic, and just to kind of, because it's like crack to me. I like it. And the thing is, though, as much as I love consuming, these crazy experiences that people have showed, or like even cops have talked about, I'm still a skeptic. There's a lot that I still am not quite sure what I believe, what I not. But I still like this stuff. I still like, am very interested in the topic itself. I just haven't decided kind of like what my opinion is of these. Um, but I thought it'd be interesting if I can kind of go through what some of my experiences that I've had in my life, which they're not crazy. I've not had a defining experience that has swayed my opinion on. I believe that this was that. I'm just going to talk about what happened and just leave it up to whoever's watching to kind of come to a conclusion about it. But I'll give some of my theories as well. So first one I want to start off with this was back in 2008 when I used to live in Damascus, Oregon, and kind of like in a backwoods country. There's just a huge forest and then a road that kind of cut through it, and there was a couple of houses here and there, but it was a very heavily woodland area. And I used to kind of just explore the area just to kind of, pretend like I was in the military or pretend I was fighting monsters. It was a great area to grow up in. But there was a couple weird things that did happen to me. I remember the first time was when I was a child. I was about 5 years old. And to this day, because my siblings were present during when this happened, and to this day, they say they didn't happen. They don't have no memory of it. But I have a very clear memory of it. And it's not like a dream memory where you kind of like, it's like, is it a dream or is it a reality? It felt like a real thing to me. The memory does not feel like a dream memory. So that's why it stuck out to me. So I was 5 years old. In our backyard, we kind of had like this grassy area that would extend out for about an acre until we get to a big tree line. And in the tree line, there's a pathway that cuts through that my father had dug through, a bore basically through a trail through the forest. So me and my siblings went out there one day. It was about evening, and we were playing in the woods, using sticks as swords and whatever. And my siblings start looking at me, but they're looking almost behind me, and their faces just contort in like a terror. They're looking at something, and then they scream and they run away, leaving me in the woods. As a 5-year-old child, I'm in the woods alone. And I turn around because I just get this intense fear of like, what am I going to look at? I turn around. And what I see is something that is very hard to explain. What I've always just called it is the Blue Fireman, because I used to have this little action figure that was this blue-colored guy. It was a firefighter. And I've always associated with that because the color and because of the vague shape of it. The color was this blue figure. It had like almost like a red or orange outline. Because when you like rub your eyes, you can kind of get those little things, floaters or things. It looked like that, but it was a very clear a human figure, and it was kind of shaped like what I thought a firefighter, because it had a suit on. What looked like a suit had like I couldn't see any facial features. It was just kind of like just this massive kind of contorting colors and whatnot. But it looked like a helmet. It looked like, I don't remember if there was an axe or not. I can't. That's the one detail I can't remember. But I just always associated with a firefighter with my firefighter action figure thing. And I black out. I don't remember how I got out of the woods. I don't remember because it started approaching me. I turn around and I look, and it's kind of just walking through the trees, And it's not walking on the path. It's kind of like walking over the trees. It's like it's being projected. It's not really like touching the ground. It kind of felt like a hologram or something. And to this day, like I said, my siblings, and I've told them this story many times, they have no memory of it. They're like, I think you're just imagining that. And, it very well could be, 5 years old, have vivid imaginations, but I'd never had anything else like that happen. I've never had a dream, because I remember the dreams I had as a kid. I remember the first dream I've ever had was a black and white dream after I had seen the giant tarantula movie. And I could distinguish. I was like 3 or 4 years old when I saw it. I knew that was a dream, but this certain incident did not feel like a dream. It felt like a memory. And the weirdest thing was just kind of just blacking out once the figure started walking towards me. It was very frightening, but I just remember like not being in the woods anymore and just kind of being in my room and just being like, what happened? Oh, okay. And just kind of went on with my life. And I didn't tell my siblings about that, and they didn't react to me at all weird after that. It was almost as if they kind of suppressed it too. But I don't necessarily know what I saw. And if it wasn't a dream and this was a real thing, I have no idea. Like I said, it looked kind of like a hologram. So if we're speaking supernaturally, and I'm not saying any of this is true, or what I believe it to be, but I'm just saying like theories. First one could be a ghost. There could be like this guy living in the woods who's a firefighter in the 20s or whatever. But sure, I don't necessarily believe in ghosts. I don't really believe in an afterlife. But yeah, or if there is ghosts, they're not what we think as the souls of living people. They could be interdimensional things, and maybe I got a glimpse of something from the other side, like a kind of like a tear in reality. Because it didn't, like I said, it didn't look like a person. It had the human figure, but there was no. It almost looked like fractals. That's why it kind of looks when you rub your eyes. It kind of has that weird pixelated effect, but it had a very clear figure, and it was walking towards me. And my siblings reacted to it, so it wasn't just in my own vision. The other thing, it could have been a UFO. It could be an alien, wandering in the woods and just checking on this child. And maybe the reason why I don't remember that is because I was abducted, or I don't know, maybe planted back in my room. Probably not, but it's fun to speculate, and especially that it's been so long. I don't really have trauma or fear about it anymore. It's more just kind of like, that was a weird memory. But anyway, so that was the first odd situation that I came across. Next was this was back in 2007, around the summertime, late spring, early summer. Me and my family went up to Yellowstone National Park, and a beautiful park. It's not just, people know it for the big geysers, but it's a huge park. Lots of wilderness areas, lots of broad fields and forests that have no trails or roads to go to. It's a wilderness. To some extent, we just know it for the the Old Faithful and the geysers and stuff. But there's a lot more to it. So me and my family were driving down one of the pathways, trying to get to between different parks. There's like little areas where like the geyser spot, another part where there's like a bear place to watch bear habitat. So we were on the way to that, and along the way we decided to stop off on the side of the road and have a picnic. Where we stopped was kind of like where there was the road, and then on the other side of it, just a rock wall, and on the other side was this big field with, on the other end of it, about 2 acres across, was a tree line. And down below, there was a little spot where we can have a picnic. There was no tables. It was not a real picnic spot. We just figured we'll make our own picnic spot. So my family set up the chairs and got the grill out. My dad started cooking hot dogs and burgers for us. And I, being the curious fellow that I am, decided to wander off on my own. So past the tree line, I headed off to the field. And behind the tree line, there's this big mountain that I could see. It's gorgeous rock, just sitting behind, kind of like the silhouette of the sun behind it, because it's kind of getting towards the evening. So I decided to go into this little woodsy area, about 2 acres past our campsite. The woods is not really dense. It's kind of sparse trees, kind of had the brush through, vines and weeds and stuff, until I got to about 2 acres into the woods, and it came to another clearing on the other side. And this clearing, it was just a grassy field with some purple and blue flowers kind of sprinkled throughout the area. And on the other side of this was another tree line. And so I just decided there's a rock in the middle of the little grass, and I decided to just sit there. And I had a little sandwich with me, so I was eating my sandwich. And as I was sitting on this rock, the tree line further to me on the other side of this field, there's these slats of trees, and I see a movement walking between the trees. It's very tall and brown. And the first thing I think of is it a person? Am I walking to someone else's campsite? And as I'm walking, I realize that this thing is about 8 to 9 feet above the tree, behind the trees. So I'm just looking at it, and I just see this. It's dark, like dark brown thing walking like this, and it hides behind a tree, stops behind a tree, so I can't really see it. And as I'm looking at it, I don't really know what I'm looking at, because I'm a little bit afraid to figure out what I'm looking at. And then I see it's something peek behind the tree. Like it looked like granted, this was far away, but what it looked like was a face looking behind the tree at me, just kind of like it was behind the tree, and then just looked at me. At that moment, I didn't even think about it. I booked it right back right back into the woods behind me, got cut up into the trees, went back, got to the other field, and saw my family making their dinner. I just ran over there, and they're like, "Jace, what are you doing? Where'd you go?" And I'm just, I think I just ventured off into the wilderness and kind of mumbling. Didn't want to say that like I saw something creepy, because I don't want to frighten them, but I also did not want to be there anymore. And I'm like, kind of just vaguely being like, maybe we can continue going. And they're like, Jace, we just set up our dinner. We're gonna have dinner first. So I'm just like, oh God, okay. And eventually we had the dinner, and we got back in our car and drove away. But the whole time I was just watching that tree line, making sure I wasn't seeing anything else. And for that whole trip, I was just thinking about that thing looking like this, and I couldn't see any face. It was too far away. But from the shape of it, I mean, what kind of animal does this? The first thing I thought of at first, obviously, I thought it was a hiker person. I mean, granted, we were in a really rural area. There was no other cars parked on the side of the road. So, but the other thing was, it was very tall, because just kind of basing on how big the trees were, the tree line, this thing was at least 8 feet tall. And also, it was dark brown, which would make me think that it could be a bear, because bears do get to that height, and they are known for walking on their hind legs. A lot of people have mistaken Bigfoot and Sasquatch with bear, because they do walk it upright. Weird thing about this one, though, is that there was a very clear stride in the walk. I could see like these arm movements walking by. And bears, when they walk, they're kind of like this, right? And I saw the arm movement, these muscly arms. Then, when it went behind the tree, I've never seen a bear go like that, peeking around the corner like that. That's odd bear behavior. So I don't know if it was a bear or not. I don't know if it was a person. And I'm not going to say it was Bigfoot. I'm not going to say it was the Sasquatch. But it definitely wasn't something that I was familiar with in that park. So, again, one of those things that I can't really place. I'm like, what did I see? I don't know, but it terrified me. And I still think about it every so often. Just knowing that thing was kind of aware that I was there and just kind of looking at me. It was like, whew. So anyway, another supernatural experience. This was, again, back at my old. This is about 2008, 2009. This is back in my old neighborhood in Damascus, Oregon. And on our street, you'd go down the street, and there's kind of houses, and then it would turn off. And before it would turn off, it would peer into this giant field that was about 4 or 5 acres wide. At the end of that, there was a tree line. And big field, someone owned it who I didn't know who the owner was, but we would kind of play around the area at night. But he didn't usually like people, in that area. But we would go there anyway. We'd hang kind of like a little hangout spot in a little big field right between the fork in the road and the field. So my sister had a friend. She was my younger sister at the time. She was about maybe 13 or 14 years old. And she had a male friend. It wasn't a boyfriend. It was a male friend who lived down the street, and they would hang out in that area. That was kind of a meetup spot. And I'd like to prank them. I'd like to go over there and try to scare them or jump out at them or try to freak them out in various ways. Nothing cruel or anything like that. Just I thought it's a fun thing that I would do. But one of these nights, um, I was walking down the pathway headed towards that, and I hear the sound of loud chatter. And I was kind of like, oh, this is my sisters over there and with their friends, but their chatter does not sound fun. It sounds panicked. And I keep hearing, what is that? What is that? So I kind of very quickly walk over to the fork in the road, and I see my sister and her friend going like this. Look, what is that? Looking over at the skyline of the tree line all the way across the field. And I walk over there, and it doesn't take me long to see what they're pointing at. Right hovering over the tree line is this white light, the traditional disc or dinner plate thing. It was this white light that was just at the edge of it. I was seeing it descending into the tree line. Got a very, very, very brief glimpse of it, but what it looked like was just a light that was slowly going into the tree line. I saw just the top of it. Then above it, there was three other little tinier lights just going, just kind of like following after it. And my sister and her friend are panic. What is that? And I asked them because I just saw the tail end of it, and I said, "What was that?" She's like, "It looked like a flying saucer. It was like a ship that was flying across there, and I saw there's three other things. There's maybe even four of them flying all over the area." And I'm like, "Okay, that's interesting." And then that night, I was just really freaked out, and we went home, and I was just kind of like, "Okay, we'll just forget about it." So, maybe some helicopter that didn't make any noise for some reason. And those other little things we're trying to come up with all these. I was trying to come up with all these rational theories of what it could have possibly been, because at the time I was not UFO believer. I didn't really think that any of that stuff was. I don't know how much about that I believed, but it was still fascinating to me. Like, what did we see? So the following night, I decided to go for another walk because I wanted to see what I could see. And as I was walking, I got this intense feeling of dread. And I'm not like a person who's really afraid of the dark. I'm not really afraid of monsters or aliens because I'm not sure if I believe in them or not. But at that moment, just walking down the street headed towards the field, I got this intense feeling of anxiety and dread. Like something was right over me, watching me. And I look up, and the first thing I see is just, because we're in the country, so we see like just stars, this big, beautiful black sky with sparkles and stars. You get to see Jupiter up to the west. And I'm looking at one of the particular lights, and I'm pretty sure that's Jupiter or Venus. And as it's staying there for a while, it goes, just shoots off into the opposite direction from where I first saw. Like just wave, like I'm talking lightning fast. It's there, and then just like a white strip across the sky, and then it was gone. And that was the last I heard of that one, or saw of anything flying. But then cut to maybe, I want to say 2 years later, we were at, I don't remember the park it was at. It was like a volcanic rock area where like dried pumice rock. And there's a little campsite you can hang out there. And my mom was hanging out by the fire or a place. And my mom is a hardcore skeptic. She's religious. She's Christian. She doesn't believe in aliens or anything supernatural other than stuff that's related to Christianity. So she's not doesn't believe in any of that alien stuff. Until she's sitting there and she walks in the RV because we had RV was there. She walks in the RV with this expression of like, oh, I'm like, Mom, what happened? She's like, I was sitting looking up at the sky and there's this green light that went zip and zip and then disappeared up into the sky. And I'm like, it gave me a chill of knowing that my mom was saying this because she is very practical. She does not have those kind of odd experiences, but it really freaked me out here seeing her fear. And my whole family just started looking around the sky. We didn't see anything else, but we're all kind of like, what was that? That was crazy. So yeah, that's in terms of like the UFO stuff, that's about all I've experienced. And again, these are little things that I can't really say, that's an alien from Zeta Reticuli. That's an interdimensional creature. Can't say that because I don't know. There's no way to know because I didn't really get a good glimpse of any of these things. let's see here. Those are the main three that I've experienced, that I've personally experienced myself, that I've seen. However, I have heard things that have been haunting, to say the least. I remember in my same neighborhood in the rural Oregon, I was kind of in that same area with the UFOs thing. I'm sitting on a rock. I don't remember if this was before or after the UFO. Could have been around the same time. But I remember just hanging out there and hearing this loud scream, this howl. And I know what coyotes sound. I know what even bobcats sound like. Where bobcats can kind of sound almost human, and coyotes sound like cackling clowns. I've seen videos on YouTube where people are like, "There's an evil witch in the woods," and the audio is literally of a coyote just doing the kind of yapping thing they do. And I've even heard elk. Elk can roar. It's pretty impressive when you hear going toward down the Montana area or Yellowstone. I remember here just looking to the side and seeing this elk just open its mouth and just loud, just shrill. I'm like, wow, it gave me chills. I'm just like, that's cool. This wasn't like that. This was a different sound. This was a sound, if it was a human being, this person must have had the highest vocal range I've ever heard and the loudest, because this sound, I could tell, was a lot ways away, like echoing throughout the entire street. This was a good, almost could have been a mile or two away, but it was so loud that I could hear it from all of where I was. So this is a person screaming like that. They got to be in some kind of world record. But what's weird about that sound is that later on, I kind of do my Bigfoot research. I came across some audio recordings online about what people have recorded saying it's Bigfoot. And what I heard sounded just like those, that weird, at the same time, high pitch and also deep at the same time. It's a weird kind of way to describe it, but it can kind of go through both. But it sounds like a scream or a yell. And it sounded just like what I heard. And so that was unnerving to hear when I first saw that. I was just like, okay, so whatever I heard, those people are hearing it too. So it's definitely a real animal, since more people are hearing about it. The question is, what is this animal? And again, I don't know. It could be the thing that I saw in Yellowstone. I didn't hear any sound from the Yellowstone thing. I just saw it. But this one, think about just how big this world and how much wilderness there is. People say the world is overpopulated, but man, if you've ever traveled through like in the Midwest or Upper Canada, there is just most of this world is wild. It's wilderness. There's all kinds, especially Upper Canada and like the Russian taiga. There is just country-sized chunks of wilderness that no one lives, no one explores. Often because like the terrain is pretty uninhabitable. Lots of rocky areas, or just dense forests, or it's just too cold. But in those areas, who knows what could be living in those places? Especially like I'm fascinated with Upper Canada because there is just so much area up there of stories that have come out of giants or werewolves or Sasquatches, and I would love to do an expedition up there into like the real rural, like the Yukon or the Northern Territory, somewhere like just really dense in or sparse in population. And hopefully maybe I'll bring my camera with me. We'll get a whole crew with us, and we can just kind of stake out for like a week or two just in the woods experiencing nature and just see what we find. I think maybe it could be a goal of this YouTube channel, if I can get to that point where I can have an expedition out there. Because I'll do it. I love the wilderness. Terrified by it, but I'm very comfortable navigating through the woods and mountains. Not that I'm a tracker or anything like that, but I grew up in that area, so I know how to navigate things a little better than city dwelling people. But yeah, so those are really like the prime stories that I can think of right now. There might be others that I'm just completely spacing on right now, and if I do remember them, I will. Oh, yes, I have one more. This one is once again something I didn't see, but I heard. I guess you can kind of say it's not something. So, in my Damascus home, I lived essentially in the basement. It was kind of like a half basement. So you'd go into the front door and it's the living room, flat lever, and upstairs there's the upstairs. But then if you go downward, basically the living room area was a half floor because you couldn't. It wasn't really a floor directly above it. It's kind of a half floor. And you go to the when you enter the house, you'd go down the steps into the essentially half basement, where half of the yard, the house was underground, but you could still have windows at the top where you can see it. My bedroom was right kind of at the front, where it would be kind of near the entrance to the crawl space. Yeah, you can see where this is going. So my bed was kind of right by the entrance. It was this old rickety, woody, splintery door with a little hook that looped it. So you go like this, and the door would open. There's no lock or anything, no handle, just literally just a piece of wood with a little lock and a hinge. And sometimes I'd have to go down in there because when it would get cold, the pipes would freeze, and I had to turn on the hot water. So I had to manually crawl in there, and it was always terrifying because there were these giant ass spiders that would be crawling on the walls, scare the crap out of me. And I'm also arachnophobic, so going down there is even worse. But relatively, I wasn't that terrified. So one night, I was sleeping on my cot. I had a cot. I did not have a bed. I had a cot. And I start hearing something from the door. I start hearing that little hinge clicking, like something's pushing it, moving it. At first, I just kind of trying to think, okay, is that coming from the door? Is that something else? But no, I figure out it's coming from that little hinge. The hinge is like tapping back and forth. And I realized the door is being pushed from the other side, very ever so gently. And the way the house was structured, there wasn't really any wind current. There's no way the wind could have blown that, because that was literally the entrance to the underground of the house, basically the underground. So in order to have that door move, something on the other side had been pushing it. And so I'm looking at, I kind of crawl up my bed and just kind of look over the side of the cot and see the door ever so gently. And I immediately just cover up and I'm like, okay, just go to sleep, just go to sleep, go to sleep. Took me a couple hours, but eventually I went to sleep and was immediately awoken because I had sleep paralysis of someone's hand on my face. I could, and were shaking my head around so violently that when I woke up, I could feel a handprint on my face and my neck was sore. And it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my childhood because I had no idea, first of all, what sleep paralysis was. I thought I was dead. I woke up and I just couldn't move, and suddenly this hand went over my face like this. Now, I didn't see this hand. Just in the dream, I could feel it, just kind of moving my head around. And then when I got up, I had the sleep paralysis. But then I can also feel the pain in my neck, and it's kind of this warm, or maybe it was a cold handprint on my face. And so I just laid there just and petrified, just what happened? And I immediately decided I don't want to live in this basement anymore. So I moved across to the other side of the house where you can go to the backyard. It was still the lower layer, but the way it was, our house was kind of built on a hill. So on the other side would just lead right to the yard. So it wasn't underground. And I never went back. That room was too terrifying to me. Every time I would be in there since then, it would be just a feeling of just kind of dread, like, ugh, something's wrong in here. And weirdly enough, I will never, ever get a chance to see that place again because not only did I move out there, but that house eventually was burned down. And they don't really know what happened. This was about 4 or 5 years after I moved out. I moved out to a neighboring city. And I would visit there every so often, just drive by, have good memories of my old neighborhood. And one day I drove by and I just see rubble. The house was gone. There was a fire, and I don't think there was I looked into the records of it, and there didn't seem to be much information how the fire started. And, fires can start all different kind of ways. But I just thought it was weird that particular house, the one that had the grabby hand man thing, just caught on fire and was gone forever. So those are my experiences. Again, nothing that I can just say this was that or that was this. These are just what happened, and it's up to whoever's watching to kind of come up with their own interpretations. But I'm very fascinated by this stuff, and I'd love to hear people's opinions on what it could be. I love talking about supernatural. So if you have anything to add to this, or your own experiences, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And I do plan on doing more of this stuff, more stories and experiences in my own life. I think that might be a nice avenue because I've had a very, very interesting life. And I've experienced some very strange things. Not all supernatural, but definitely just weird things that I think are funny stories or scary stories. And I'd like to share some of them with you. And I guess YouTube is a good avenue for that because yeah, I'm reaching apparently 300,000 subscribers now. So there's viewers now. So you'll be able to get to see a little chunk of my life and hopefully get to know some of you. Anyway, that's all for today. And hope you guys have a great, what is today, Saturday? And enjoy the rest of your weekend and take care.